This podcast is brought to you by Cascade CPA, a local professional services firm supporting Madison businesses and nonprofits with their various back of office needs. The firm aims to provide high quality professional services and be true business partners to small and mid market employers. If you're interested in accounting and tax advisory, Cascade CPA is committed to serving Madison and the downtown community. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another issue of the Downtown Happenings podcast. I'm Jason Ostrip with Downtown Madison Inc., podcast where we talk about all things downtown. We are very excited to have some of our favorites here from the Isthmus. We have Judy Davidoff, the editor, and Jason Joyce, the publisher, to talk about what's going on with the Isthmus, what's the future of local media. This is a hugely important topic for our community. We are only as good, honestly, as our media in places that are watching us and making sure we have the information about what's happening in our community, particularly the downtown, which the Isthmus has been doing, I just learned from Jason Joyce, for 49 years. They're going to celebrate their 50th anniversary in 2026. I think we should all celebrate 50 years of the amazing Isthmus. Jason and Judy, how are you doing today?
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, doing great.
It's good to see you. So, we just talked about 50 years. Tell us about why the Isthmus has been so important culturally for the civic fabric for so many decades.
Jason, you want to?
Well, the Isthmus comes out of this, in the 70s when papers like ours were starting, many of them around the country. And, Vince O'Hearn and Fred Milverstedt were paying attention to that. And certainly throughout the 80s and 90s, there was this great movement of what they called alternative weeklies, alternative news weeklies. And that's the sort of the template that Isthmus used, was an alternative. But whereas in other markets, the alternative weekly might, a good market, they would achieve like 13% market penetration, something like that. It was read by people who, hung out in bars and, ate their burrito over the paper while they were meeting a friend or whatever.
Is that an actual real example that you've done?
I may have eaten a burrito or two over a newspaper. But Madison is an alternative city. So we're the mainstream in an alternative city. Our market penetration, back in the day when we measured such things, 38%. So much more. And, Madison thinks the way we think about many things. And they're curious people in this city. They appreciate in-depth news, informed arts and entertainment coverage, our food coverage. And so there's been this conversation, I think, between Isthmus editors and reporters and the community that's been going on for a long time. And we've really, we've been able to grow with the city. I'm sure Judy has, her own theories on that, but that's mine.
Well, just playing off what you said, in terms of some of the other alts, they really were more entertainment focused, calendar covering music, culture, important. And we've certainly always had an emphasis on cultural or culture coverage as well. But I do think one way Isthmus distinguished itself early on was with an equal focus on local news, important local news, and also allowing reporters to provide some voice, which is, not bias, but it's really looking at the issue and not necessarily doing a he said, she said coverage, which, was really new to the marketplace at one point. Now, of course, we have media that really has been forced to call out dishonesties. But, the alts like Isthmus were really far ahead on that by, in terms of providing good, honest coverage to readers.
Talk about that evolution. I mean, you guys, certainly started out in the arts and culture business. You continue to be great stewards of that civic space, particularly the local civic space. But a lot has happened over the 50-year history of the Isthmus, in particular under COVID, right? When many of your sister type organizations in other cities were really struggling. How was the Isthmus able to pivot in this new direction and still remain a flourishing alternative media source for our community?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it does speak to some of the people who were on staff at the time when COVID arrived. And we were faced with the prospect of Isthmus going away. The former owners just didn't see a financial way forward. There were a few of us who had kind of continued to do some writing when we learned that people were going to be laid off in March 2020. The owners did agree to keep the website up, the social media platforms up, and we just thought that was maybe our only chance of staying alive through all of this, was not to completely go away. And I think I don't know. I think there were just a few people around who, saw that maybe there would be a future as a nonprofit organization. Um, Kind of had the privilege, some, home security of being able to write and, do work without getting a paycheck for that amount of time. That really, we got unemployment, but that was about it. Started charting a path forward. I think that if, Isthmus is just a very, at least for me, and I think for others, it's just a very special publication. I mean, it's special to the community. I think it's been special for all sorts of writers over the years, from someone who just has a one-off column. There's a home at Isthmus. There's not really a home at other publications necessarily for a one-off personal essay or a guest column. And there have always been editors at Isthmus who are willing to entertain the idea, the story, work with someone who's maybe not really a writer, but has something to say. That's very different, and it's rare. And we thought it was very special to hold on to.
Jason,
The other,
oh yeah, please, by all means.
yeah, the other aspect of this is, of course, how we, it was a bet, to basically say, can Isthmus come back from this? Can, certainly, Jeff Haupt and, the former owners
Craig
donated
Bartlett.
donated the intellectual property, allowed us to continue operating with the name Isthmus, which matters a lot to a lot of people. But then there was this idea of converting to nonprofit status and going to the community and saying, okay, so you've been getting this paper for free for years. Will you pay directly to help us support it? That was a bet. Would they do it? Would the community come forward and do it? And they did in, an overwhelming way. They continue to do so. So many of our, we have about 1,100 people who donate to Isthmus in one way, shape, or form. Many of them donate $10 a month, and just keep that sustaining membership wide open. But we get checks for $5. We get checks for $5,000, but we get checks for $5, $10, $20, $25 here and there, which is tremendously meaningful. Because really, I mean, businessmen would tell you, hey, if you've given something away for free, no one's going to pay for it. But that has not been our experience at all. So, again, that relationship between our staff and our readers has really been meaningful, not just because they've supplied us with the money that we needed to operate, but it's allowed us to, get that motivation to say, well, there are people who are really behind us. And, that's so helpful. Judy mentioned the staff, and I just want to, sort of call them out by name. Linda Falkenstein is our associate editor. She's been around. She's been with us for many, many years and stuck with us. Bob Coe is our calendar editor, which a lot of people really point to as being their sort of guidepost. That calendar. And then if you're an organization running events, he really picks up the slack on that stuff. Tommy Washbush is our design guy. He's been with us for years, left for a little while, came back. He's the one who puts together this amazing community of artists that illustrate the cover for us every month. That's, really meaningful. Barbara Bolin, who is our ad director, worked in the market for years, now works remotely from Portland, Oregon, really driving that revenue. Mark Clear is also with us, and Dylan Brogan was with us for a while when we came back. That was tremendous to have his energy. And then, you mentioned our new staff writer, Liam Barron, who's really picked up that energy of, wanting to just be everywhere at once in the city.
And you've got an excellent team. You just talked about it.
Yep.
It's producing excellent product. But obviously there's headwinds for local media. We're seeing it all across the spectrum, but it does seem like you guys have found a home in this nonprofit model. Why has this been so successful for you, and has it been successful for other local news agencies throughout the country?
Well, I'm going to let Jason talk more about this, but one thing I would throw out is that at the same time that, certainly the loss of advertising during COVID was, the reason for our quick kind of demise at that point, but it's really helping support us to a large degree. So, Jason, if you want to talk a little bit more about that, it's
Yeah, there's a
part of our revenue.
movement. There's a movement, and it started long before COVID, of nonprofit news in the country, and it basically was due to what we hear about news deserts. The local newspaper's literally gone out of business, or it's a chain has been bought up by private equity, and they've just shut down these local newspapers. And it's maybe an email newsletter was started by two or three former daily newspaper writers, and they're running it on a shoestring budget. We adopted many of those practices from the nonprofit world, but we did continue to hold on to an advertising operation. Now that operation looks a lot different now than it did 10 years ago. We used to have, car dealerships, real estate agents. That has shifted a little bit. What came back full bore are other arts and entertainment organizations, because they know that they sell tickets with us. They know that our readership are active Madison people looking to go out, looking to find things to do with their weekend, and they're just passionate about the arts and local music. So that really has, those folks have come back, and they've sort of brought each other along, right? It's like, hey, the Barrymore's in Isthmus, maybe I need to be in Isthmus too. So that's been great. What I think we didn't anticipate is banks, like financial institutions, have really come on board and been really successful for us. We've just started working with some other big entities in town, Madison College being one of them, their continuing education. So that story about being a nonprofit and certainly seeking donations from people in the community who have said to us over and over again, boy, Isthmus is so valuable. It's an institution. Local news is important. We need to make sure that we have watchdogs over local government. That's a big piece of it. But Isthmus was always a business, and it was always it paid the bills by delivering for our customers, and we continue to do that and hear that from our customers, that it's effective. It's an effective vehicle for them to reach audiences.
I mean, two thoughts. You've had your dedicated readership for a long time, but of course, because of so much arts and culture and talking about what's happening in local government, you're getting a lot of new folks that are coming in. And because Madison's growing as a young city, it fits perfectly in, right? These new 25 to 26, 27, 28-year-olds, they're going to read it to find something to do and then love that newspaper, which I think is so important. In talking about that local coverage, right? We're seeing so much uncertainty right now in the federal government and what's going on. Something we can control is more the local government, and you really are looking into that. Question that I have for both of you is, what do you believe that an independent local journalism plays in supporting a vibrant downtown, particularly for us, but a vibrant community as well?
I mean, just plays a huge role. And, I think what we do see, unfortunately, is how newsrooms are shrinking everywhere, and including in Madison. Madison, when people look from outside in, would say, wow, it's a media-rich city. We have the State Journal, we have the Capital Times, we have Madison 365, we have, glossy magazines, we have a monthly magazine. We have Isthmus, wow. There are so many places that don't maybe even have one organization like that. But when you look further, you see that all of these places are diminished from what they were. You would have at a time, 4 or 5 people covering the city or the city and county. You just don't have the dedicated beat reporters anymore. And that means, you don't have those eyes on what your local officials are doing. So it's extremely important. You see the impact of coverage on something before a vote. If if you're reading the agendas for city or county committees and you put some information up there about a pending issue, you have eyeballs on that, and it does foster debate. And I'm sure that it can swing, votes at times. So yeah, I mean, there is research out there that says, you have increased partisanship and really increased dysfunction in government when local news disappears.
The other thing I think that's important to note is like reporters in the internet age, at a certain point, it became sort of the advice like, hey, pay attention how much traffic your stories are getting, listen to your readers that way, how many people are clicking and reading. So that reinforces your motivation to do things. And when Isthmus has gone, and this, particularly true in the last few years, when we've really had to pick our lane, like where are our resources best spent. So, when Liam, looks into and writes a big story about what the city's doing about, traffic on Willie Street, and traffic to that story, people read that story, it blows up to some degree. Boy, that really reinforces this, like, oh, we're not just spitting into the wind here. Like we're writing stories that people really care about. And that, generates this community debate and discussion that's informed by the facts. And, especially for a young reporter like Liam, but really for all reporters, to sit there then through a meeting and listen, hey, somebody's quoting from my story. People are reading it. They're using those facts that I reported to bolster this conversation. Boy, that's that's the real juice of journalism right there. Right? That gets you going. And then you're like, I want to find that next story. And it's not like, oh, now I'm going to go down to the Capitol and report on something that Tony Evers is doing, even though we do some of that too. It gives you permission to say, we can report on the local. And there's great interest in that. So that's great.
I'm always been a believer that local government matters almost more than any other branch of government, right? I mean, federal government gets so much of the oxygen, these big conversations, but the day-to-day life, I mean, what affects you more than transportation issues you talked about on Willie Street, land use, public safety, schooling, right? I've got a child, right? This stuff matters. And you all do such a great job. Another thing that matters, though, and you have a rich tradition of covering arts and culture.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this has a really important part of economic development, right? You're helping put spotlights on things to do, and that matters to more. So why is arts and culture continue to be a huge part of what the Isthmus is covering?
I mean, I think, we had these conversations again when sort of the old Isthmus was on its way out, and, what's the new Isthmus going to be? Because, of course, it could have been anything, right? It could have just been local news. It could have just been online. To be honest, that would have been a lot easier than what we do. But that's not what we thought the community wanted. That's not what we thought Isthmus was. And we also, of course, think, culture is important. I mean, Madison is incredible in, again, what it offers, for a city its size. You can't get to, a little, I mean, it's almost too much. You don't know what to do, every weekend or, how you're going to fit it all in. And so, how can you not cover kind of that rich world? And it's just, I mean, especially right now with the state of the world in many ways, it is people's, savior. I mean, you need the arts. You need that outlet. And again, we have a rich community of artists. We have a rich community of, performers coming in. It's part of the city.
We punch above our weight class, as you know, Jason, from talking to downtown people all over the country, in terms of, many aspects of life in Madison, but in particular for arts and entertainment. And I think people understand that a little bit. One of the stories that we hear, particularly on the advertising side, to be honest, because we meet with folks who are administrators of these great local cultural institutions that we have, the orchestras, the theater companies who say, boy, we're coming back from COVID at a rate that is not being seen in other markets. And, it just speaks to how people in Madison like to be out, and I don't know where that comes from necessarily. It probably has a lot to do with our overeducation here. So many people affiliated with the university and state government. They're just curious people. They're active. They want to be part of something going on. They like to be out in the buzzy city. And yeah, we've always been about that, literally since like issue one. What's going on in the city? What are people doing? What are they talking about out there? And that calendar again. Vince O'Hearn used to say, "Boy, that calendar is the backbone of what we do," and we try to be as comprehensive as possible. A lot of papers did away with their calendars because it was just hard. The work that Bob Coe does is difficult. It's like painstaking. There's a show at the Gamma Ray, and the band has one start time, and the venue has another start time, and the promoter has a third start. So chasing all that stuff down and really nailing it down. I think that's part of it. I think people, who have this one place where they can go to find out what to do on a Friday night, it organizes their thinking a little bit. Maybe they see a band 3 or 4 times pop up. Maybe we should check them out. That's what we've been about for forever. And I think that answers a demand. It's a symbiotic relationship, of course. But yeah, Madison's an artsy, fun town.
To plug also in terms of not just the calendar, but the picks. And, those are essentially the highlights. And I do think what we provide that is different, and a lot of it is because of Bob Coe's direction, but a bunch of other writers is too, Linda and other contributors, is the context for whatever that event is. It's not just, Bob Dylan is going to be at Alpine. For some people that you might not know, they're going to tell you, oh, sounds like a mix of Bonnie Raitt and, Joni, whatever, So it gives you an idea of whether or not you might want to go to that event. And so there's so much rich, knowledge of the arts and music, and that depth, again, is part of our calendar. And these picks. And I think that's very different from just a listing that you see elsewhere.
Yes, our writers, our part-time contributors, our freelancers, they know their stuff. They're not doing this for them to get rich, gosh knows. They're doing it, so many of our contributors, boy, they've lived in Madison for 40, 50, 30 years. They can connect the dots on this. They can bring that rich context that our picks really have. And plus, Isthmus has always been a paper that really valued blurbs. Certainly we have the 3,000 word stories, but we also, our reporters, and this is harder to do than you might think, are really good at writing a 3-sentence, blurb about something. That's a talent that a lot of people overlook, I think.
Well, you guys provide a huge service. Someone wiser than me once said, I can't remember who it was, but Madison loves to entertain itself. And there are so many options out there, and be able to curate that is really important. Last question I have is sort of looking ahead. What excites you most about the future of Madison and how it's shaped, or excuse me, well, that's a big one too. The future of the Isthmus and how it's shaping the role in Madison. Although you could ask the first question, what excites you most about Madison too, if you want.
I think what excites me is that we're still here. I think we have a good plan for the next couple of years. I think I like to say we're stable, not necessarily sustainable, but we're working on that sustainability. And so, we have a few board members now on board who are, really active, helping with fundraising. That makes a huge difference, to feel you have that support. I think, with Liam on board, our staff writer, I feel we're covering the local news, really to the best of our ability, and maybe, a little bit more. So I think we're in a good place for growth. And I think that's, so I see a future with a few other things in place. I mean, we need some more money to build to get some more staff so we can cover more and so we can have a little bit of, cushion. We need cushion for the current staff, but I think we're in a good place for that.
I think that, bringing it back to the 50th, what the two guys, Vince and Fred, who started the paper, really identified at that time was there were all these baby boomers moving to Madison, right? And they were looking for stuff to do and looking to connect with each other and literally like looking for dates, like personals ads and, apartment sublets and stuff. Well, as we know, I mean, how many of our conversations at DMI are informed by this idea that Gen Z is descending on Madison right now. These young professionals are moving here. And we know from paying attention to their conversations what they're curious about. They want to make a home here. They want to know what the fabric of this community is all about, what our priorities are, what's important to Madison. And we can help answer a lot of those questions. So that's what I'm excited about as someone who, sort of falls in the middle, in my 50s. And I've seen that, the boomers ahead of me and the folks who have moved in after me, trying to connect the dots on what our values are as a community and as journalists. So those are the things that I think are really exciting. Madison's not getting any less interesting to write about. We're finding personalities and stories all the time. We have far, far more than we can hit. And yeah, I think the most exciting thing, again, in the near term is moving into the 50th, seeing, folks on our board, approaching some folks who are interested in donating, who are answering our fundraising calls, who are like, yeah, I think Isthmus is important. You're right. And I am willing to support you. And, here, let's talk more about that. That's again, that kind of adrenaline that journalists feed off of. It's the same idea. Like, boy, yeah, people are into what we're doing. Let's keep it going. So,
Well, if you're into what they're doing, support them, right?
exactly.
Read
Right.
the newspaper, click through, but give. That does matter, and our community can help. All right. I didn't tell you I was going to do this ahead of time because you probably would have said
Oh,
no. Yeah, here you go. We're going to do something called the Fast and Furious Five, Judy and Jason. I'm going to ask you top of mind questions. Just tell me what's ever at the top of your mind. Okay? Super easy. I want to disclaim, though, for the Isthmus right now, they are not saying that any of these are their favorites or the Isthmus's favorites. All right. Pretty easy. What's your go-to place for coffee in downtown?
Ankara.
I like Wonder State, but I really go to all the coffee shops.
Good answer, Jason.
I
All
really
the
do.
advertisers take note.
Oh.
Yes,
We buy our
honestly,
beans at Colectivo.
I will say this: we are rich with coffee shops in downtown. I had a conversation with a far west side Alder once. He had like one coffee shop in his district, and Alder Revere has like 30 in his district. So
Yeah.
yes, we
And
are
they're all
rich with
local.
that.
They're all indie.
They're,
That's great.
yeah, I mean, Starbucks here or there, but they're the vast majority are local. All right, what's your favorite lunch spot on the Isthmus?
Oh, let's see here. I do love a Casetta kitchen sandwich.
Mhm.
We share this in common.
Hard to get these days.
It's a whole thing. Yep.
Hot commodity. Judy,
I don't do, I mean,
you don't eat lunch?
I just don't do lunch. I mean, when we were at 100 State, Cassetto was definitely
Yeah.
the fagioli soup. Loved it.
Oh, it's the underrated item at that place. The soup is.
We've written about it.
No, yeah, sorry. So maybe more. Yes, you have rated it. All
Rate
right,
it.
your hidden gem downtown. I've stumped you.
Hmm.
Yeah, I always think about this in terms of like what's hidden anymore, in downtown Madison. There's so much out there.
Does
Boy,
Tornado's little back patio
Oh,
count?
that definitely counts. Yes, yes, that definitely counts. The
yeah,
place is
this
good. The steak sandwich is like $12 or something like that too. It's delicious. The
Tornado.
Corral Room, highly recommended.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, again, now how far east does downtown go? But
We go all the way to the Yahara,
all the way to the Yahara.
your neighborhood.
Oh.
Yeah. Batch Bakehouse is not really a secret so much anymore, but nothing puts a smile on my face like getting a Cine Mini at Batch Bakehouse and then a little cortado at Domestique right next door. And I sit on that bench and watch Willie Street walk past. So
You had me at cinnamon roll. Like that is my one vice. Ah, I love cinnamon
it's
rolls. Right. If you could only attend one downtown festival a year, what would it be? Considering you all cover like 98 of them, I think.
I love Fête de Marquette. It's big in body and it's bigger and bigger every year. I was at the Willie Street Fair yesterday and ran into Gary Callis, who continues to work tirelessly on Willie and maybe I'm revealing a secret. I think he likes Willie Street Fair the best, but I really love Fête de Marquette.
I love Fête too.
Like I gotta say, I went this year and it was happening this year.
Yeah.
Great acts,
Yeah.
great energy. I went to a forward game and then right after it was the energy.
That weekend was nuts. We hosted a convention that week. And so we had all newspapers from around the country come in, and there was Art Fair on the Square, Fête de Marquette, Forward, a few other things going on I can't even remember right now. That is Madison at the height of Madison, I feel like, that second week of July, right in the middle of summer. Great.
I mean, I gotta say, when you bring these conferences in, you don't have to do extra programming because
Right.
there's things happening. If it's concerts on the square or Taste of Madison, Art Fair on the Square, there's something happening, Badger game, whatever it is, there is something happening. Now, maybe in January, there's not quite as much, but all right. Last question. What's your one word to describe downtown Madison today?
Walkable.
Oh, I like that. It is.
It is.
Very.
I think promising. Like there's still stuff, there's still room to grow in downtown Madison. There's still, State Street, as I feel like at this crossroads, to be super dumb about it. But right, like all these things are happening and it's gonna change, and there's some people who don't like the change, and there's some people who don't know anything other than change when it comes to downtown. But I think there's a lot of room to grow down there. And I don't know what the destination looks like, but there's a lot of promise, I think.
Yeah, I mean, downtown's organic, right? They're going to change.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love if we can make it a walkable and a promising downtown, I think we've all done pretty well. I want to say a huge thank you to Judy Davidoff, editor, and Jason Joyce, publisher of the Isthmus. It is a literally cover to cover read every single month for me. And then, of course, amazing online articles in between. Can't thank you enough. I want to say to our community in downtown, let's support the Isthmus as much as possible because it truly is just an amazing publication talking about downtown all of the time. So thank you, Judy and Jason, for all of your hard work to keep the Isthmus alive and thriving.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.